Hey there guys, this is Sam
and Justin
at the Survival Review, and today we are going way back to the classic sequel, one of the best sequels of all time, Bride of Frankenstein.
Because last year we reviewed the original Frankenstein, and we wanted to do Bride of Frankenstein right after. We just didn't have time with our schedule of movies we wanted to do. So this was literally the first movie that we planned to review this year.
Yeah, this was right off the bat. We were thinking of movies that we were going to review for October, and we're like, Bride of Frankenstein, obviously.
Because this is one that I just really wanted to talk about last year, especially because the Frankenstein movies are my favorite Universal monsters, and these two films go together so perfectly.
They really do.
So if you want to see our opinion on the original Frankenstein, you can check out that review that we already did. We did that one last year. But now on to its sequel. So the plot of this movie, it picks up immediately where the original left off, after them burning the windmill. And Henry, of course, survived. He's been taken home to his fiancée. Everybody thinks the monster is burned, but of course he hasn't.
No.
He's just hanging out in the little pit that the windmill made after it burned. And he gets loose. While this is happening, Henry is at his home just recovering. But then he gets a visit from the scientist named Dr. Pretorius, who has this plan for him to build a bride for the monster.
He's basically the instigator of all the bad stuff in this movie.
Pretty much. So the movie is just following the monster and his kind of journey while he's on the loose, and him slowly learning more. He learns how to speak in this movie, which is really cool. And while that's going on, Dr. Pretorius is trying to convince Henry to build the bride for him. And Henry doesn't want to. He's interested in the idea of it, and he wants to find out more. He's still intrigued in the whole bringing dead people back to life, but he doesn't want to do it. There is this prologue to the movie that it is a little silly the way it's played out. It's a cool idea, but it's kind of silly the way it's played out, kind of like the intro to the first movie with that guy coming on stage warning us that the movie might be too scary. This one, you see Mary Shelley in this castle with her two friends, and they're just like, oh man, your story about Frankenstein was so terrifying. And she's like, oh, well, that's not where it ends.
They're still alive.
I do think it a shame, Mary, to end your story quite so suddenly.
That wasn't the end at all. Would you like to hear what happened after that?
And that's when the movie starts.
It was an interesting way to start it. Yeah. I kind of like it, but
I like the idea of it more than the execution, because it comes off as a little silly.
Look at her, Shelley. Can you believe that bland and lovely brow conceived of Frankenstein?
And it does kind of feel like a disservice to Mary Shelley, because this is really not her work.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's inspired by. The idea of building the bride was in the novel, and the monster speaking was in the novel. But aside from that, this is a totally original movie.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting way to start the movie. It's different than how most monster movies begin. Mm-hmm. It follows off of the first one very well, aside from kind of ignores that epilogue from the first movie of Henry all alive and well. And you could tell that this movie has a bigger budget than the first one. The most obvious thing being Frankenstein's castle, which in the first one looked like a normal household for people at that time. In this one, it's really elaborate, huge looking set that doesn't fit the first movie at all.
No, but it's still great. It's awesome. There's a lot of really, really cool atmosphere.
Yes.
In all the sets in this movie, a lot of shadows and dark creepiness.
Yes. And the music is grander in this one.
Yeah.
The first one was one of the early talkies, so it didn't have a whole lot of music. This one has a big grand score that plays throughout the movie. So you can see where the budget gets bigger. Watching Evil Dead 1 and then watching Evil Dead 2. You can see where it gets bigger, but it still feels right in line with the first film. Mm-hmm. It's from the same director as the first one, James Whale. And again, it stars Boris Karloff as the monster and Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein, who to me, aside from the monster, was the standout part in the first film.
Yeah.
So having him back was awesome.
I love it. When you see the credits roll at the end, it says, a good cast is worth reusing. And that's so appropriate for this movie.
Yes.
They do a great job again.
Yes. Colin Clive in the movie, he doesn't play the same type of character in the first one, because he's not the mad scientist anymore. And even at the end, when he builds the bride, he's forced into it. And I thought that was kind of an interesting play on the character than just a typical mad scientist, because we have Dr. Pretorius to be the mad scientist. And this guy is awesome.
He is. He's seriously just he's a mad scientist.
There's a scene where he's just sitting in a crypt, just drinking wine. It's
great.
I give you the monster.
Just right off the bat, when you first meet this character, you're like, okay, I know what this guy's all about.
Yeah. And he's the best. He's awesome. Boris Karloff as the monster is great as usual. He gets to actually expand upon the character in this one, which I love. You actually get to hear him talk.
Frankenstein.
Normally with these monster movies, it's just Frankenstein lumbering around.
Yep.
This one develops his character more, and you get even more sympathetic for him in this movie.
The character of Frankenstein's monster gets developed a lot more. Particularly, and the most memorably, is when he meets the blind man in the forest. It's so iconic. It's a really, really great scene that makes you feel for him even more when it ends because
oh my god, yeah. That ending of that scene is so like heartbreaking when the guys go in there looking for like shelter and they see the monster and they just burn down the place.
Yeah, they burn down this guy's home.
Yeah.
And it's like the monster was finally happy. He was learning to speak pretty much from this guy. And that's a sad part of this movie.
Every scene you see him in, he's just like being wrongfully accused and like wrongfully attacked. I mean, granted, he did murder people, so there is that. But, like, you still feel bad for him throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
I also love the makeup on the monster in this one, because his face is more burnt from the ending of the last one, and you get to see more of, like, the seams kind of keeping him together. Like, his hair some of his hair got burned off.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a cool, like, expansion of what happened in the first movie, a continuation of it.
It's another great reason why this movie goes so well with the first.
Yeah, this movie actually has a cool use of special effects. There's a really weird scene that tone-wise doesn't really match with the movie, but visually it's cool where Dr. Pretorius has made these small people.
Yeah, because that's all he can manage to animate. He's going to Henry because he wants to witness him animating life. And rather than him making these tiny people that are like 2 inches tall or whatever.
And that scene is a little silly.
It is.
A little out of place. But like visually, for effects from 1935, it looks really good.
Yeah, it was cool.
It's a good achievement in special effects.
And I think that's part of the reason why they put it in the movies.
Yeah.
Because they're like, we can do this and it looks cool, so we'll just kind of throw it in there.
So the movie does have a lot of attempts at humor. And a lot of times it doesn't really work. It works when they're subtly doing it.
Yeah.
Like moments near the end, and like they try when they lure the monster away by showing him scotch.
Yeah.
And like that's when it works. But sometimes they play like silly music.
Yeah.
And that stuff doesn't really mesh with the tone. And of course you get to see the one actress from The Invisible Man.
Who is so over the top.
Yes.
And I love her, but God, she is a little much.
Yeah, so some of the humor doesn't quite work all the time.
Yeah.
And I could have done without some of that humor. And then we get to the title of the movie, The Bride of Frankenstein, who doesn't appear until literally the last 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and then she gets blown to atoms.
Yes. Don't you just love when your laboratory has one lever that'll totally self-destruct the entire building?
Yeah, it's a very convenient lever.
But yeah, the bride is not in this movie a whole lot at all.
Not much at all. The only part that she's in it is just she gets animated and the monster enters and
in another heartbreaking scene for the monster, she rejects him.
Yeah, like very rudely.
Yeah. Feels so bad for the monster in this movie. Boris Karloff does that so well. You just feel so bad for him for the entire movie.
And he says something like,
She hates me like others.
and it's emotional.
It really is.
You really feel for the monster. By far, this is the most human depiction of the monster, I feel. Like, he can actually speak in this movie, which is not common for him.
No, it's the only one in any Universal Monster movie to actually have him speak.
Which sucks, because it was a good thing for his character.
I'm always going back and forth between which one I like better, this one or the original. I know for the longest time I've been saying that I actually like this one better than the original.
It's tough to say. I would say I think I might like Bride a bit more. It's
more
just
complex.
a toss-up. Yeah. Because they both do different things.
Yeah.
And they both do them extremely well.
I mean, it doesn't really matter which is better. Just watch them together and you're good. You got two great movies together.
Exactly. And they're not that long, so it's really not like watching a really long double feature.
No. These are two of my favorite horror movies. And it also helps that I love the Universal Monster movies. Those are some of my favorite horror movies overall, but I think these ones stand out the most with some of the other great ones as the top tier films of the Universal Monster canon. So out of 10.
Out of 10. I'd give the movie a 9 out of 10. I can't quite go 10, but I'm giving it a 9.
Despite there being some little issues with the out-of-place humor, I'm still going to give this a 10 out of 10. The only real flaws I have with it are the humor. But I feel the rest of the movie just makes up for it.
Yeah.
And it's such a memorable film. So that's Bride of Frankenstein. One of the best sequels ever made.
Yeah. Without a doubt, one of the top 10 or even top 5 best sequels ever made. It's really, really good.
So of course there was many other Frankenstein sequels after this. The next one after this was Son of Frankenstein, which was the last time Boris Karloff played the monster. And in my opinion, it's another great one.
Yeah.
It's not as good as the original and Bride, in my opinion. Those to me are still the two top ones. This one, I'd say, is just right under it.
I think it is more of an acquired taste because I
Yes.
don't like it just as much as Justin, and I know a lot of people like it quite a bit. I think it's good.
It's a really good movie that we won't be reviewing next time. We have another movie planned, but definitely, probably next year when we do this, we're going to talk about Son of Frankenstein. It's definitely one that's worth discussing.
For sure.
So, what we're going to be talking about next. We wanted to do another Universal Monster movie because we love those, and we haven't gotten to really talk about any of them, really, aside from last year we did Frankenstein and Invisible Man, and now we just did Bride of Frankenstein. So we were kind of thinking, which one should we do? And we decided, instead of just doing a regular monster movie, like instead of just doing like The Mummy or Wolfman, we decided to have fun with it. So next time we're going to be talking about Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
So, until then, we'll see you guys later.